In a sad turn of events, we will not be getting Shakur Stevenson versus Frank Martin, as Frank Martin has pulled out of the fight in which many have said is a duck. Frank Martin has ducked Shakur Stevenson like so many other fighters. We're going to get into it right here on the Never Drop podcast. Make sure you subscribe. Did Frank Martin duck Shakur Stevenson? As you know, last week it was reported, I did a video on it, Shakur Stevenson versus Frank Martin had been officially made. They're looking at the dates of November 16th or December 9th as the fight, but reported today, Frank Martin has pulled out of the fight. What happened was apparently all contracts were good, everything was looking good. Top Rank, Shakur's side, sent it over to Frank Martin and his side to get the signature, to make it officially official. Frank Martin's team got back to him and said, you know what, I don't think we're not really interested in this anymore. Appreciate it, but no thanks. So is this a duck? That's one thing I don't like to do. I don't like to criticize boxers and say they're ducking one another because they're doing something that really puts their life on the line, getting in the ring and fighting with another boxer, another fighter. But this doesn't look good for Frank Martin. I'm a Frank Martin fan. I thought as a fighter, he's really, really good. And he was someone who seemed ready and willing to fight these top guys, right? He even put out a tweet saying, hey, these guys need to send the contract over. Once they send the contract over, I'll sign it and we can make this fight. We can make any fight with the top 135 pounders. But from what's been reported by Mike Coppinger and other outlets, it looks like when the contract was sent over, Frank Martin said, no thanks, I'm not interested anymore. Which to me is interesting because this is what Frank Martin wants, right? He wants a shot against one of the top fighters at 135. And you wonder, maybe, I know some people have talked about the idea on Twitter, maybe he's pulling out because a Gervonta Davis fight at 135 is more likely. Maybe that'll happen at the end of the year. So we'd rather take that fight against Tank Davis versus Shakur Stevenson because he'd make more money. Personally, I don't think that's going to happen. I think Tank Davis is going to return against Isaac Cruz, a rematch. I don't think Tank's going to go up against Frank Martin because Frank Martin poses problems. I think Frank Martin, for him, a fight against Shakur might be even tougher than a fight against Tank. Not saying that he can beat Tank or Shakur. He'll put up a great fight against both of them. But a Tank fight, I believe, has more ways for Frank Martin to win than a Shakur fight. But if Tank fights Isaac Cruz, it looks like Frank Martin ducked him. From the outside looking in, it definitely looks like Frank Martin did a duck and said, I'd rather not lose this and fight Shakur, which has been a common theme now with Shakur. Loma said, no, I want the rest of 2023, take time away. Was it George Kambosos said, no, I don't want to. I believe he told that earlier this year. He said when Shakur was obligated to fight, or not obligated, but was going to fight in April, George Kambosos said, no, I'm okay. I want a little more time to recover. Isaac Cruz said, no, I'd rather wait for the Tank rematch than fight Shakur. I believe now the mandatory fight would be Edwin De Los Santos, a fight that I'm not really interested. I think Shakur wins that, and I think Shakur might win that one easy. Shakur's having a hard time finding these opponents. One, because he's really good. Really, that's the only point. He's really good. He's having these fighters duck, try and fight him. They don't want to fight Shakur because there's not really many ways to beat Shakur. Now, if you're Shakur, you look back and say, dang, maybe that Devin Haney 25% wasn't too bad because I'm not getting anyone else to fight. And then I would have made the most money in my career and I'd have had a shot at undisputed. So maybe he looks back 2020 vision and says, that Devin Haney fight, maybe that was the one. But personally, I think it's just hard for Shakur to find an opponent. Frank Martin, man, that was going to be one heck of a fight. That was going to be a great fight. There's reports saying Frank might have even made over $1 million for this fight. So really, we'll have to wait and see what Frank Martin says because it looks really bad on him right now. It does look like he was ducking Shakur Stevenson in a fight that, honestly, at 135, that might have been one of the best fights to make, Shakur versus Frank Martin. And that's not going to be the case. That's not happening anymore. And leave Shakur Stevenson in a really tough spot. He's going to be fighting November 16th on a Thursday. Who's he going to fight? We don't know. We don't know. And that's not really Shakur's fault. It's other fighters saying, I don't want to fight him. He's gotten so good that he has other fighters not wanting to fight him. So did Frank Martin duck Shakur Stevenson? At this moment, from what's been reported, it certainly looks like it. And I hate saying that because I'm a Frank Martin fan, and I don't like saying that fighters duck one another. But it certainly does look that Frank Martin might have said, I don't know about this fight. Shakur might be a little too much. We'll have to wait and see for Frank's side on this. He hasn't spoke yet. Shakur is obviously Shakur was mad. He's on Twitter. He gave him the duck emoji. It's sad that we won't be getting this 135-pound fight, but it's on to the next for Shakur. We'll see who will be taking Frank Martin's place for that November 16th date. Hopefully, Shakur can make the biggest fight, the best fight possible, but right now it's not his fault. It's all the other fighters not wanting to fight him. So we'll see. Frank Martin, it'll be interesting to see what he says and what his plans are coming up next. It's kind of a wait and see, but right now, it doesn't look good for Frank Martin. That's been the Never Drop Podcast. Appreciate you guys tuning in and listening. Make sure you press the subscribe button. Follow me on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts at the Never Drop Podcast. We're covering everything boxing. Make sure you subscribe. I appreciate you listening. That's all I got for you. Peace. I'm out.